All right, I'm joined by Thomas Bjørn. Thank you for joining the show.
Thank you.
I wanted to start with a little conversation about Denmark. I studied abroad in Denmark, Danish Institute for Study Abroad in Copenhagen.
Did you?
Yeah, it was not a real school. It was
What was it?
It was like a pay for play. Like you could go there and just basically not go to class. There was the Copenhagen Business School. That's where like the real school was happening, but there was no school going on where I was. But wonderful country, but didn't see much golf there. And I know you were the first ever to win a European Tour event from your country. What was the scene in Denmark, the golf scene growing up? Because it didn't really exist, and now we're seeing, you got the Højgaard twins, you've got so many young, not just Danish, but Swedish, and that whole region seems to be taking off in golf. What was it like when you were growing up? How'd you get started?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably underplayed a little bit how, people say, well, there wasn't much golf. I mean, any city with a decent size has its own golf club. And, I grew up in a golf club well, there was a lot of members and especially a lot of junior members. And you kind of grow up in an environment where that was your, our schools are a bit different, and so if you finish school 1:30 in the afternoon, we would go to the golf club. That was where we would hang out and spend our afternoons, and on the weekends that's where I lived my life. My parents played golf, but not to any particularly great level, but they played golf. My brother was older, he played for Denmark as well, and eventually came over here. But there was a scene of turning professional wasn't really it didn't really feel like it was going to be a successful pathway for a lot of guys. I mean, but, it started changing slowly in the 90s. We had a couple of guys that came on tour and did okay. And, the dream is there when you grow up in that environment. I always felt like that golf was the one thing I wanted to do. But it wasn't, it didn't present itself to being very successful doing it. And I always, people say to me, are you, when you talk about your career and could you have achieved more? Obviously you could have achieved more, but where I came from, that the environment I was in did not present an environment where even if you had talent, nobody believed that you could take it.
So
anywhere.
how'd you learn how to be a pro golfer then? Because I feel like you're a young guy from the US, you have maybe you go to college and you have alumni, you're in the UK, and there's this like very rich, how did you learn the ropes of professional golf?
Well, I mean, there was a lot of guys starting playing Challenge Tour and smaller tours, and there was certainly a move towards more guys turning professional, and you kind of just jump on that. You finish your amateur career, and now you have to make a choice in life. And am I going to go to university? Am I going to do whatever it is I'm going to do away from golf? Or am I going to actually put my time and effort into the game? And for me, it was a choice. I wanted to go that way. My mom certainly didn't think I should go that way. I was fortunate to have a brother that he played college golf for Baylor and was over here and was a good player. And he supported it all the way for me to actually, chase that dream that he probably felt deep down that he wasn't quite good enough to chase that dream himself, and wanted to see me chase that dream. So I was lucky I had an environment that pushed me in that direction, but it wasn't something where you thought, oh, well, you're going to go and make that your livelihood for the rest of your life and be fairly successful at it.
So you get your breakthrough on the European Tour in sort of the mid to late 90s. That's right when I was born. So I did not see any of that era of the European Tour, but from everything I hear, it was different back then. Tell me the experience of playing the Tour in the 90s when you still have all those legends that came before you. It felt like like now everyone kind of seems to play over here. Back then it was, the European Tour was its own kind of self-contained and pretty amazing atmosphere, it seemed like.
Yeah, it was a great tour at that time. I came on tour in 96 and actually made a Ryder Cup team in 97 after 18 months on tour. So it was a very quick but I walked into that Ryder Cup team with your, Sevi as a captain, but with your Faldos and Langer and Woosnam and Monty and Olazabal, and they were all in the team. So you walk into the goods and greats of the 80s and 90s of European golf, and you're part of that environment. And that tour, it was very much like you have a European Tour, you have the PGA Tour, and they were very separate, and you only really met at the majors and maybe one or two other events, and it was tough to get invitations to play in America and get into that environment. That definitely changed. I mean, I think the big change.
I think the generation right after you with like Justin Rose and Paul Casey and Luke Donald, they all started living over here and playing
Yeah.
the PGA Tour.
I think a few of those guys went to college over here, which that kind of changed that the America became part of their life. But I think for me, it's always been the big moment where it changed was the pensions on the PGA Tour.
Pensions.
When the PGA Tour introduced the pensions to the players, there was definitely a big shift amongst the players in Europe. There was like, it's not just what you make on the golf course, this is what the outlook is. And that's where I feel like a lot of guys moved and actually, then it became like, no, I need to play my golf in America. And then that has to be my main. And then, I'll go back to Europe once in a while and play events, but my main place of playing should be in America because the pensions changed the outlook for the players.
But you never did it.
No, it was never, like my family situation was never, I never felt like it. I was a member in 2004, but I always felt like I was in a good place in the world rankings. I always felt like I was playing well enough to kind of pick and choose what I wanted to play. I at that moment in time in my life, I didn't want to move. I was very happy where I lived. I was very comfortable with the European Tour. I felt like I could compete in the majors. With what in hindsight, I look back at it today and say, would things have been different? Maybe, but maybe not. It's PGA Tour is great. I mean, I love playing on it. I love being over here, but living in a different country is not for everyone. It was never that invitation, that feeling, and was never in me that's what I wanted to do for my family more than anything. We were very happy where we were, and so it was. Sometimes you have to uproot everything to make such big changes in your life, and that wasn't for me at the time. And I look back at it today and think, well, maybe I should have, and maybe it would have been different, and maybe, but you don't have just no idea where your career path goes. But I'm happy with the choices I made, and I enjoyed playing my golf in America. I've always felt that the PGA Tour has been very welcoming to me, and I've always been grateful for having the opportunities I had. But yeah, there's sometimes when people say to me, have you played that event? Have you played? And you're like, no, I never. And they can't believe you actually didn't play.
Like you never played Riviera? Did you ever play Riviera?
I did play Riviera, actually. I played Riviera Memorial. I played, obviously Players. I played Bay Hill. I played, you
played a lot of the big ones.
Big ones.
Yeah.
But you never played the kind of like middle of the road PGA Tour.
You never played like the Nelson or anything like that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I never, that was actually the two there in Dallas Fort Worth were always like up against Wentworth, and that's when the big tournament started in Britain. So the European players kind of went back home and played then.
So you are one of the best players, I would say, to never win a major in your career. I mean, you won 25 times around the world. You finished second in a bunch of majors. I haven't, I'm younger. I haven't done a lot of these interviews with legends of the game who have their days playing the majors and the PGA Tour are sort of behind them. Was that a tough thing to accept? Like toward the end that, hey, I've done so much in the game, but I didn't do this one thing. And how do you come to terms with that as a professional when so much emphasis is placed on the majors and you get to a point in your career where, I gave it a great run, but this probably realistically isn't happening?
I mean, when you're in it, that's the only thing that's on your mind. That's the dream you chase. And when you stand at the end of it and you realize that dream is not going to come your way, you kind of go, what would I have done different? What, you as a player, you analyze every situation and to kind of improve. And now you realize it doesn't matter how much I analyze and how much I look at it, it's not going to change. But then I go back to what I said before. From where I came from, I have no regrets in my golfing life. I have no regrets about what I did. And, I always feel like I made choices that to try and make me as good as possible. And I didn't I didn't get over the line, and I got close in a couple of majors, and yeah, one or two of them you feel like I could have done better on Sunday, and one or two of them, it didn't fall out my way. We played at a time where, when I was at my best, we played at a time where somebody else was at his best as well. So that made it extremely difficult to win major championships. But I'm grateful I played in that era. I'm grateful for what I achieved. I look back at my achievements in the majors and thinking where I came from as a kid and the background I had, I have way overachieved what I could ever imagined. But yeah, of course you would want to win a major championship because, you know, everybody from the outside judges your careers on what you did in the majors. And when you haven't won one, well, then you're not in that group of players. And that obviously, you know, I probably to some extent feel like I had the game and I had the, you know, the ability to do that. But it wasn't to be, and I fall into that group of players that should have probably won one but didn't.
You mentioned the guy, Mr. Woods. He's 4.5, 5 kind of years younger than you are. Obviously, in the U.S., everyone knew about him. He had won all the U.S. amateurs. He had, won the national championship in college. When word started to spread in Europe, there's this guy. He's pretty damn good. What were those early days like, realizing, okay, not only is this guy amazing, we're kind of in the same age bracket, and I'm going to have to deal with him the rest of my career.
And I don't think that has changed to today. You know, you on tour, you hear about this, there's this kid coming, there's this great player, and you're like, yeah, well, we've seen
Heard that before.
We've seen that a million times before, and, very rarely are they that good. People like building them up when they're young, and then, they come out, and then there's a reality check. And I think everybody felt a little bit like that. Oh, well, he's going to walk into a reality check out
You'll
here.
learn, as Curtis Strange said.
Yeah, well, boom, But the first time you saw him play, actually the first time you were in his presence of playing, you thought, yeah, okay, this is different. This is something you haven't seen before. There's an ability and a way of doing things that we haven't seen in the game. And then as you started seeing him develop and being around him more, you realize the ability and the talent combined with the strength of that, like the physical strength and the mental strength, you just compounded it all into one. And you thought, okay, here's something that's going to be extremely difficult to deal with on most occasions. But I kind of always had the attitude with Tiger, like I always felt like when I played with him, I was privileged to have the best seat in the house to watch the best player that's ever played the game. And I always felt like, just try and hang on to his shirt tails. You would always, as an athlete, go on and say, well, I'm just going to beat this guy. But, you never really felt like with Tiger that when he was at A+, that you were going to beat him. So you just go out and try, okay, I'll try and hang on and hang on and hang on.
Did you guys have a good battle?
Yeah, we had some pretty good battles, and we had one in Dubai where we played all 4 rounds together and went head to head, and but you just try and hang on to him and see how long you can hang on for, and that's kind of what it was like. But I'll also say this, as much as it sometimes annoyed you that every time you showed up at the majors and the World Golf Championships, after 1 or 2 rounds, you realized, okay, he's got that game this week and then he's probably going to win. That would annoy you at times because you felt like, for the rest of us, it was a bit like, it's a bit of a letdown. But then on the other hand, the privilege of playing at a time where he played at his best was, I'm very grateful that I experienced that, because I don't think the generation of today understands how good he was. And that's not like, I think they are probably, a lot of them, pretty equal to the task today of playing the game that he played. But this was a different time. The level, he was better than everybody
what you
else.
said earlier about it wasn't just the talent, it was the dedication. And I'm wondering, your career aligned perfectly with this massive boom in golf, where it just feels like it's gotten more serious. Guys are more serious about how they train and what they eat. And you've been in the team room in the Ryder Cup with this new generation. How does it compare to the best players in the world when in the 90s when you came out to the best players in the world in the 2020s? In terms of how they go about their business.
No, but I think that when you go back and look at the great, some of the greats of that time, I still think the dedication and the, if you take your Faldos, your Normans.
I guess Faldo was pretty serious.
They were very serious, they were very dedicated. But the difference today is that the 280th guy is as dedicated as the number 1 guy. That was not the case then. That back then it might have been 20 guys that had that dedication. Today it's all of them. So it brings the bottom much closer, and that makes it a lot tougher environment to be in. I look at it today and I think scores and the way they play through the whole field is like, wow, this is a completely different world. But they learned that from a much earlier age.
So when you guys were playing in the 90s, would guys go get beers and stuff after rounds? Because that doesn't happen anymore.
No, that doesn't happen as much as it used to then, that's for sure. But I think, I'm probably of the generation, and certainly from a part of the world also, where that was maybe not as much as a part of it. But I think I'm definitely that's probably where it starts changing. My generation and the one that comes after that, it just changed. But I think then go back to as well, like a golfing life back then was just a way of life and making way. Today, the opportunity of making an unbelievable life for yourself is so much greater. So you probably get forced more into a path of dedication than you did then.
So I want to talk to you about the Ryder Cup. You have an amazing history. You played in 3 as a player, won all of them. You won your captaincy in 2018. You've been assistant captain so many times. What did the Ryder Cup mean to you as a player?
In those late 90s, I mean, I can't seem to remember, there was a long period where no Europeans won majors, and there was a lot of criticism about European players not standing up in the major championships, and one popped up here and once in a while and won one. But that you argue that Monty and your Montys, your Westwoods, your Clarks, they should also have won more than they did. But the finger was pointed. So this was our moment to stand up and shine and be better and be recognized, and we did it as a group. And I think that was very apparent when you showed up at a Ryder Cup, that environment that we created was, okay, we do this together. We're going to show the world that we are better and stronger than a lot of people maybe point finger at us and say we are not good enough to stand up in the major championships. So I think that was certainly a part of it. So for me, it was a moment to show that we could be part of something bigger and greater, and I think that kind of fulfilled itself over a long period of time, and we brought that on to the next generation. That is probably a more successful generation as us as individuals, and then that's kind of the environment.
But they still have
today.
The spirit. I mean, I'm talking about Rory and Rahm and Fleetwood and Victor, these guys who are in the prime of their careers and having all the success. You still feel like they have that passion for the Ryder Cup?
Well, they do, because they walk into an environment that is there, where that comes from the older generation that's put on the table for them. Through the captaincies of the last 30, 40 years, that's put on the table for them, that this is the environment, this is who we are. They buy into it, and then they live it. It's been passed on to them from that generation, and they are now, they get into, and you speak here, like when you take somebody like Rory, you can hear him talking about that he wants to leave that for the next generation, and he's, we're not been in a world where we've been thinking of Rory being that guy, but he now gets to that age where he is that guy, now he's building his legacy, where before he was just winning golf tournaments and creating a world where he wanted to be the best player. Now the building of a legacy comes now. And he totally understands that. And he knows that through the Ryder Cup, he can pass something on to the next generation.
We are in a period of European dominance in the Ryder Cup. I think they've won 2 of the last 4 on the road, which is really tough for an American like me to stomach. There's a lot of chatter while you guys were celebrating about what does the U.S. Ryder Cup team need to do. Why does Europe keep winning this thing?
I mean,
it's not like you guys have on paper the teams. I mean, a lot of times that Europe has won the Americans, and we'll get to your Ryder Cup in a second, the one that you captained. A lot of times the Americans have the numerical advantage in the world rankings, whether that's a product of a skewed world ranking system is a separate conversation. I mean, you look at the teams this year, they were pretty much a dead heat statistically. Is it just a small sample size? Is there something that Europe is able to tap into those weeks?
Yeah, but it's difficult. We get put on the spot with this all the time, and for us, it's difficult to answer what the differences are because we are not in the other team. I can only speak for what we do and how we do things, and I go back to what I said before. You create an environment where they are at ease with everything that's going on, and you create a world around them where they can be at their best and they can go out and play their best. And but I also think like sometimes if you're on the right side of an event, so it can be any event, you could be, you come to a venue or you come to an event.
I just won my first club championship on Sunday.
Well,
so next year I'm going to have that energy.
Well, exactly. You'll go into it and think, with a good feeling. So when you're on the right side of an event, you go into it with, you look forward to it.
There's no pressure.
You want to do it. You know all the good things that comes with it. So it's an easy environment to walk into. And I think we have, over a long period of time, by winning Ryder Cups, we created that environment. And even when we lose, we still have so many good memories from Ryder Cups that we won. So the loss doesn't affect us so much. Well, I do maybe sometimes think that the American team, have a lot of scars from losing Ryder Cups. So when it goes wrong, they might have to deal with that.
Europe gets off to a fast start on Friday of this year's Ryder Cup, and all of a sudden, those thoughts start creeping in your head of, another slow start. Europe's up again. We can't lose at home, and that sort of.
Yeah, but but I only can speak for us. When when you get your tail up, Ryder Cups it's always about momentum. When you get your tails up, it's difficult to stop the snowball. It really is.
So I want to talk about your captaincy, 2018. I think that was the Ryder Cup where I think it's widely accepted. I know you wouldn't say this, but I'll say it so you don't have to. Where you guys just outprepared the Americans. Seemed like there was a strategic edge. The setup of the golf course was so narrow, so penal, and when you look back on that, the captain's picks that the Americans made, I think it was Bryson, Tiger, Tony Finau, and Phil, guys who hit it really long but also quite crooked. Did you feel going into that like, oh, we have an edge here?
I mean, for the last 3 months into that Ryder Cup, all I heard was that this is the greatest American team of all time. So I don't think I have the arrogance in me to kind of go, well, I feel like I have an advantage here over that team. I would never go into a Ryder Cup feeling like that. I would never match the two teams up, because you have no control over what happens on the other side. You can only focus on what you're doing and what you build around your team. I was never concerned about the result more than, yes, it pops in your head, you want to win and all this, but I was never concerned about it. I was never focused on the result until the singles had teed off on Sunday morning. Then I had a moment there where I was on my own, where I was like, Jesus, the next few hours is kind of very determining of what you spent the last 20 months doing. So, that's a moment where it hits you. The Ryder Cups have created such great memories for me, and I wanted those 12 players that played under me in that Ryder Cup to have one of the best weeks of their lives. I wanted to create an environment where it was just there for them to play, for them to enjoy, for their families to enjoy, for everybody around them to enjoy a fantastic week in Paris, and by that go out and deliver a performance. But I never looked at the other team and went, oh, I got an advantage here.
You didn't feel like they were falling into a trap with the way the course was set up?
Well, but it, you can talk about it being narrow, and you can talk about it being this, that, and the other. Rory McIlroy is the best driver of the golf ball in the world, and I took the driver out of his hands. He hit 2 or 3 drivers on the golf. So I took my best player and I took his best club out of his hands. So it wasn't like it wasn't affecting us as well as much as it was affecting the Americans. But I had this kind of like, no, I'm gonna do this because I believe that this is the way, with the way that golf course was set up, and to be honest, I didn't make it much narrower than it normally is.
It's pretty narrow to begin with.
When we played the French Open, and one of the things I was asked all these questions in setup of the golf course is, well, I don't really want our guys to play a golf course they don't know. This is the golf course they know. That's the golf course I want them to play, because they played 10 French Opens on it. So I want them to recognize what they're playing on. But you have a golf course and you have a team, and you try and get everything out of that in your mind. You don't try and predict. I was never sitting in the world predicting what's Jim gonna do. And I was never in the world of thinking, oh, this guy doesn't hit it very straight at the Americans, and yeah, but they're the best players in the world.
Right, they figure it out.
They are gonna.
They play major championships where it's pretty penal.
They're gonna figure out.
What about the fact that they all played? Wasn't that the one that was the week after the Tour Championship?
Yes.
So they flew on an overnight flight, and a lot of your players would have played in the Tour
6 of our
Championship
guys
too.
flew in.
But that would, I feel like, now that would never fly. Like even in the last 6 years or 7 years, the Ryder Cup has become a lot more serious. I feel like about preparation. The Ryder Cup that was in Italy, the Americans hadn't played in 6 weeks, so they go from one on the road where they all played the week before in America, and they get there and they're like knackered. You could see Tiger was like, after he had just won his first win since he came back from injury. He was like sleepwalking through the first couple days, and then they go to a next one where they didn't play for 6 weeks and everyone was rusty. I don't feel like that could fly these days. Like the Ryder Cup, everyone gets there a lot earlier. Do you feel like it's gotten more? There's been more emphasis on the preparation now.
I don't know what we do. We try and prep our guys.
Yeah, I guess you guys have been doing the Wentworth a couple weeks before.
Yeah, we prep our guys in a way where we believe that works. And I'll say this, that Luke has certainly put a completely new, different level to that with his practice trips. And I think if you took a team of the 90s and they spent as much time together as our team does now, you would probably struggle to keep them together as a good group. But this group, and this is probably why this group is so good, it's a very unique group. It is a very, very unique group. I've been a part of a lot of these. This group is very unique.
What makes you say that?
Just the camaraderie between them. There was 11 guys from Rome that was there again in New York.
And the twin brother.
And you kind of switch the twins. So, they know each other extremely well. They work extremely well in each other's company. It's just a very unique group. And sometimes in sports, you get that group, where a group of players just do something very well together. And it's very likely that a lot of those are going to be there next time as well.
You wrote handwritten notes for all of your players in 2018. What was your thought process behind doing that?
I did a lot of things for all of my players, but I spent 20 months of my life only focusing on this and just trying to do things that are different, trying to do things that they will remember, things that they would appreciate as players. And you do 20 different things, and it might only be one of the things that they remember.
That the media picks up on.
And even the players, and they'll forget all the others. But if you do one thing that makes a difference, and if you do one thing that they take with them as a great memory from that lasts them the rest of their lives, well then you've done a good job. They live very busy lives, and they play a lot of golf tournaments, and they don't want to talk Ryder Cup too early. They loved the last 2 or 3 weeks pre-Ryder Cup and then the Ryder Cup week, but they also want to get out of it. They don't want to hang on to that the only thing that's talked about is the Ryder Cup now. They get back into their individual careers and want to focus on that. So there's a moment there where the Ryder Cup lives very much in their minds, and that's the best moments with them, but also they move on, and so they should.
We had Ian Poulter on the show right before Bethpage, and he was talking about how disappointed he is to be out of the Ryder Cup picture. And you talked about the generation before you, the Faldos, the Longers, the generation kind of right after you that had a ton of success in the Ryder Cup. Lee Westwood, Ian Poulter, Sergio Garcia, Henrik Stenson. These guys are kind of on the outside looking in, and it's an interesting dynamic because you have two guys who are currently playing on Live Golf in John Rahm and Tyrrell Hatton, who are a massive part of this group that you keep talking about. What have you made of the last 5 years, these guys going to Live, the kind of strong response, and this sort of limbo that we seem to be in now where, guys like Ian Poulter and Sergio Garcia they're vital to the European Ryder Cup story, and they're not involved right now?
Yeah, this is my generation of guys, or maybe they're just right behind me, but I got Westwood on Live as well. It's certainly his contributions to the Ryder Cup is supposed to be greater than anyone in my time. So, it's tough to watch those guys because you've been part of teams with them, you've been part of a world with them. I had Poulter and Henrik in my team. I had Graham McDowell.
You picked a bunch. Didn't you pick a bunch of them?
Well,
picked.
Yeah, I did.
Poulter and Casey and
Sergio.
Yeah.
And Henrik. So all four my picks were on Live today, and I also had Westwood and McDowell in my backroom team there. So they're guys that have been close to me in my whole career, and
it's got to be a little weird, like a little awkward.
It is weird, but it's also but I think when I look at it and I go, if I take away my relationship and look at, because they are, first of all, they're great guys, and second of all, they've obviously been great players and great contributors to our fantastic story in Ryder Cup. But when I look at it today, and I look at the group of guys that are there, and I look at Luke, and I look at the bonds that they have created with each other within that Ryder Cup team, that's probably one of the greatest bonds I've ever seen. And I wish that Luke is going to continue as captain, because I think there's just something very special in this group, and I think that will live for many, many, many years to come. That was arguably the most special time for a European Ryder Cup team, what he has created in the last two Ryder Cups.
So you want him to go back for a third?
I would love him to go back for a third for that reason.
Well, it sort of feels like then at that point, the role of the captaincy is changing a little bit. In the past, it seemed like it was a reward for life well lived in golf, right?
Yeah,
and everyone got their chance. It'd be interesting with 3 in a row. It's like on the European side, it's like, we got something special. Let's keep it riding.
Yeah, but you say that, when you go back, Jacqueline did it more than once. Bernard Gallagher did it.
I guess
once.
on your guys' side,
Davis Love did it.
Yeah.
Did it twice. Tom Watson's done it twice. So it's not, it's not completely new or completely different. I just think there's a very special thing going on with these guys, and I think Luke has been fantastic. And I'd like to see him do it again. And I might be biased, so I have a very, very good relationship with him. I just think there's just something there, and the interaction between him and those 12 guys is very, very special. And so why not ride it?
My last question for you, you are a European Tour or DP World Tour institution. You played your entire career mainly on that tour. You won a lot of golf tournaments on that tour. In the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen that tour almost become a feeder tour to the PGA Tour. The top 10 players on the European Tour get their PGA Tour cards. They buy a house in America. They start their life in America. Does it bum you out at all?
I'd just like to see the game be a worldwide game, and I don't necessarily think it's taking the right steps in that direction. I think there's a lot of different factors pulling in different ways. I still think there's great opportunities for people to have maybe a close look at how they look upon the game in all corners, and actually realize that we have opportunities with one of the greatest sports games there are, and we reach every corner of the world. Golf is played everywhere. It cannot be secluded to play in one country. It cannot be that we have to have these fights across the game. I said many years ago, one of the biggest dangers in this sport is that golf spends more time fighting each other inside the game, and we don't have the power we need to fight other sports. We've got to find our position in sports and fight other sports off. We have a game that is, that so many people around the world love playing, and it seems like we have this idea that we should play very few tournaments, we should play very few big tournaments. That's not the game. The game is that we play, for me, we play quite a lot of golf tournaments, and it reaches every corner of the world, and the best players in the world, I think, get on and play and get around the world and play some golf, because you're missing out. The game of golf has taken me to everywhere in this world. I've played some of the best golf courses, and the best golf courses I've played are not in Europe, they're not in America, they're in Australia. There's some amazing courses in South Africa, played unbelievable courses in Japan. So you're missing out if you don't go around in the world. And when you get onto this tour, the Champions Tour, then you look back at what happened. You don't look forward. You look back at what's been part of your life. And they are my best memories.
The traveling.
The traveling, the long trips, playing Royal Melbourne, playing Sun City, playing in those events. They are my best memories of my career. And the generation of today, and that's why I love what Rory's doing. Like, he's now
going to play in India, going to play in the Middle East.
He's going to go and play the Australian Open this year, and he's going to go. I think he's right at that age where he realizes, if I'm going to do it, now is the time. I can't do it later. And I wish a lot more of the guys would do that. And then I wish that the people that run every part of this game, not just the PGA Tour or the European Tour, but every part of this game, realize what you're doing. Realize that
Well, I think when you're young,
you have this game. You have the game. It's a game that you're looking after, and you are not doing it any favors at the moment.
well, I think when you're young, I mean, I just think of someone like Scotty Scheffler. He plays almost entirely in the United States because he's got a young family. He doesn't want to get on an airplane. But what you're saying is very interesting, that you get to an age where you look back and you think what could have been.
But I said to Scotty Scheffler at the Ryder Cup, I mean, it's a privilege and honor to watch him play golf, you know, the way he plays it. Fantastic player, and even more humble and great guy to be around. Like, I have nothing but admiration for him. I think he's absolutely fantastic.
The world deserves to see it.
But, you know, there are kids in Australia, there are kids in Japan, there are kids in South Africa that would die to watch Scotty Scheffler play live. He has so much to give, so much to offer. And I'm not telling Scotty to go. He can run his own life. But you have so much to give and so much to offer. And you can touch so many people. I just wish that, you know, the players of today would do that a bit more.
Okay, I lied. Last question now, because we're here at this Champions Tour at the Schwab Cup. What role has this chapter in your life and this tour played in your career? It seems like an amazing second act.
Yeah, but it comes to an end, and you don't really realize it when it comes to an end. You kind of like, because you've been successful, you kind of end up playing a lot of golf tournaments on the main tour, and you're just not competitive, but you're kind of prolonging it, and probably you're the last person to realize that you probably shouldn't be there, but you know, and that's a tough place to be. And then you come out here, you play with the guys you played with all your career, you start feeling slightly competitive again, you start getting the enjoyment back from the game. The game starts giving you back some of what you put into it.
Some of those moments.
Well, you know, what you put into it as well. So now all of a sudden you get all that back in, and you get a few years where you can ride the wave again, and that's what this tour is all about. And, you know, this is the greatest, like we will all say this is the greatest tour we've ever played on, but it's because it gives us a second chance. It gives us another chance in our 50s to be who we once were. Trust me, the ball doesn't come out in the same windows as it used to.
Yeah, but the courses aren't as long.
No, and a lot of things are different, and you see probably more bad golf shots on this tour at times as well than you've probably seen your whole career. But you see a lot of great ones. And the one thing that have really hit me on this tour is that, and I find one of the best things about it is that once you get in there on Sunday and you get in that, you know, chance to win, these guys don't back off. You know, they won 20, 30, 40, 50 golf tournaments worldwide. They don't back off. They just get better.
Yeah.
And that's where it just all comes together and it becomes great. This is what our game is all about. And when some people talk about should it be there and what, you know, this is what the game is all about. Golf is a game from the day you're born till the day you die. That's why we can play competitive golf at a level where there's
no other sport.
No, there is no other sport. So grow it instead of
shit on it.
Yeah, because that's you know, it is the best tour in the world because it's everything golf is about.
Well, I really enjoyed that. Thanks for sitting down with us. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys enjoyed.